This is The Culture.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Cinema Wave podcast. We are here to talk to you guys today about the premiere of season 4 of HBO's True Detective, which is subtitled Night Country, starring Jodie Foster and Kali Reis. I am one of your hosts. My name is Darian Scalamoni. I am joined by Zach Miller.
How are we?
I'm good, man. So this is a show that we were both anticipating. You a little bit higher, I think, than me because we're both huge fans of the first season.
Yeah.
But I didn't really watch. I watched all of season 2 of True Detective, and I started season 3. I never got around to finishing it. I didn't dislike it. I definitely liked it more than season 2, but I think you were a fan of season 3, not as much as the debut season. But this is a very interesting shift for sure. Mm-hmm. So we have a completely different setting. We go to Alaska for this season, and this was so for the people that don't know this, and I talked to you a little bit about this off camera. The thing that was interesting to me about this season as a whole and how it came together was the fact that Jodie Foster had brought this show as a producer to HBO as something entirely not True Detective. It would have been probably similar in tone like the show is, but it was a cop drama. It had this very interesting, mysterious thriller aspect to it. And she brought the show to HBO not as a True Detective installment, but HBO was kind of didn't know where they were going directionally in terms of the series, and the show is anthology, so they could have really gone any direction. It's similar to things like Fargo and what they're doing on FX, but they decided this would really be great not only for the show to get more eyeballs, but also for our brand and IP that we created in True Detective. Why don't we create the show as an installment of True Detective? So that's what they did. When you first heard that, how did you feel? Because I was skeptical just sort of based on that idea.
I was kind of half and half because I think, True Detective is such a unique show, and but I also think that because it's different each season and it has different cases each season, there's room for exception in that at least. I think as long as they stick to the same formula of two partners going through their own grief and in the midst of a pretty bad case, I think that's the most basic formula to dilute each season down to, is that they each have their own personal traumas along with the landscape of how are we going to solve this case and murder. So I think that is what the show can continuously deliver on, and so far with this, it is doing that. So for Jodie Foster to bring that to them too, I wasn't really worried per se. I think it was definitely raising an eyebrow of okay, is this going to be far off from what we normally expect? But so far, I think it's falling into that narrative of everything that we've seen before, while also putting a unique spin on it. So that's just kind of how I was seeing it. But I was also excited because Jodie Foster was attached to. So she's like a veteran, and especially in the crime genre too, with Silence of the Lambs. She was just somebody that I was so hyped about to see return to more police dramas and stuff like that, because she adds a visceral tone to just anything like this, at least, and just based off of Silence of the Lambs. Like in that movie, she was completely belittled. She was scared and hungry to work in her environment, and she was being exposed to this sinister darkness around her with Hannibal Lecter. And then in this, so far, she's kind of that seasoned police officer that is just full of, I have to be the one to stick the flag in the ground and lead these people to justice and be my own version of justice. But she also understands that there's a lot of sinister nature out there at work, and she's starting to see that in the first episode.
Yeah, I was really excited when I heard that Jodie Foster was involved, similar to how you feel with the Silence of the Lambs connection, because that film is so great and she's so great in that role. The thing that I do love that has the same DNA as past installments of True Detective is that you have this real legitimate intrigue and mystery surrounding your two lead detectives, and they're not just cookie cutter cops that we've seen anywhere else. Like the first season, excuse me, led by Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson, two of their greatest performances ever. Then you bring in people like Colin Farrell and Rachel McAdams in the second season, Mahershala Ali in the third season. Jodie Foster, like anytime she does anything, especially because how selective she is with her projects, it's got to be legit because she's not like in everything all the time. You know what I mean? I do think this is also maybe her first television role, like major TV role since like the streaming era. If you want to look that up, but
sure.
This not only that, but for me the biggest thing that I've been excited about through the first episode is the setting. Being able to put people in a setting like the Arctic sort of adds that shadowy, like legitimately cold feeling you have as a viewer while you're experiencing things through the characters. So having a premiere like this, I think it did pretty good numbers for HBO for the first week, but I'm definitely excited to talk about it. I don't want to go too much into spoilers yet. Do you have just an overall thought process before we go into the specifics of the episode of how you thought of the premiere?
Yeah, so my first impression, which I thought was really cool, was just how isolated these people are in this environment and how harsh the environment is with the weather, with the darkness. And I know that was something they were really trying to focus on. I actually have a friend of a friend who was a camera operator on True Detective, like he was in the Alaskan unit. And
in Iceland they filmed, right?
Yeah, and they were filming like in all different areas, and so they basically like were talking about how darkness will play into this like visually and thematically, and I really liked what they did with that and how this first episode, without giving anything away yet, there are no definitive answers on what will come later on in the show so far. And I think there's a lot of horror elements that they sprinkled in, which is really cool because I think the best way to keep people engaged in a murder case in a new way, at least, and reinvent it in a little bit, is to give them no answers and to literally scare people of like what happened to these people and let your imagination wander, because that's kind of what happens to these victims in the first episode. And you're kind of like, wait, how did this happen? How did they let this happen? Where could they have gone? Like, what was the motive behind it? There's just enough clues in the first episode to let your mind piece your own conclusions together.
Yeah.
And that was my favorite part about it. And just the shock that Jodie Foster is also going through, and somebody who is supposed to be the tent pole of this town feeling rattled is like, oh man, this is not going to be good if she's a little worried about this scenario, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I thought that the thing I really took away from the first episode is, again, like that reminds me so much of the first season in a good way, is that every single character is morally like gray. Like you don't know what's happening with anybody already. Like, so I actually wasn't aware that John Hawkes was in this season. I don't know if he was in the trailers or not. I think he's such a great underrated actor. And we'll get into it when we get into the spoilers, the whole thing that's happening with him and his son and the files is very intriguing to me.
Yeah.
I don't really understand what's going on with that. And then so much of it is basing on the dynamics of our main characters and their relationships with other people. So you have Jodie Foster and her very jaded relationship with her daughter. A lot's going on there. Then you have Kali Reis and, like, I guess for the lack of a better term, it's like her fuck buddy. Like you don't know what's going on with that at all. And they have a very unique relationship where, like, I mean, you see it play out in the scene, which we'll get into. But I do like what you were saying too, the effect that the setting and the lighting has on the show as a whole. I couldn't even imagine like being in that setting where like so much of your time is just complete darkness. Because even in terms of, they say it in the show, right? At that point, they had been like on like a week straight of darkness.
Yeah, because it's becoming the specific time of year where Alaska goes into a darkness cycle where, you know, the sun doesn't reach that part of the earth in that certain time of year, which is insane to me just to live in.
Yeah.
But then to have a murder happen in this town, I couldn't even imagine how like horrified it would feel.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So crazy. I want to jump into spoilers, because I feel like there's a lot that we have to cover. So if you guys didn't watch the premiere of True Detective Night Country, go back, do that, come back to our pod, listen to our review, our full thoughts on it. We're going to analyze it as best we can, and you guys have been warned. Let's start with the opening of the show this season as a whole. Very interesting sequence. with all of the are they deer? Are they caribou? What are they? That
I think they're caribou.
caribou.
This is a
Okay.
hunting sequence.
Yes,
Yeah.
and you have this effect where they all just basically go fucking crazy and
Mhm.
sprint towards the edge of a mountain and just jump off it.
Yeah.
That already sets up the tone for like what the hell is going on.
I think it's symbolic too. I think it's the sense of like predator versus prey type of situation. Like the hunter is literally hunting them, and I think it was resonating with like, okay, this is going to happen to the victims too. Like something is driving them away or scaring them away into the depths of, wherever it is.
Yes,
So,
and so much of that, like you were saying, is in relation to the major case that is not in the foreground, but something that they talk about a lot in the premiere episode is how there was a collection of natives that were being murdered by someone. Or it was one specifically, right?
one specific woman, yeah, and they were saying that she was very outspoken against the mining company in town because she was a climate activist and a natural activist, and apparently the theory from the townsfolk is that she pissed off the wrong people and someone killed her, and that's a case that is now starting to be connected to the biggest one that's unraveling now, is because they were connected in the same way where her tongue was cut out and then now they just found a tongue that was in the lab,
which
so
is such a crazy. So going from the caribou sequence into a sequence that has so much going on, and I love that whole sort of scene where the delivery man comes in. He's like, "All right, I got to make this delivery. Like, where are you? You got to sign for this." And he walks around the lab, which I'm glad it's not like they let that scene sort of breathe, which I thought was really great. And you have him walking around, and you have the Ferris Bueller's playing when he walks in too, right? The Ferris Bueller parade scene, which later on Jodie Foster gets really pissed and is like, "Turn this shit fucking off."
Yeah,
like,
she's trying to focus. And
exactly.
Pack it up. Yeah.
But yeah, so it already sets you up as a viewer to be like really messing with your brain and being like, I don't really understand what's going on here. And yeah, they find the tongue in the lab, and eventually when Jodie Foster comes in with John Hawkes as well as his son's character, which I forget who the actor is, which I'll pull that up in a minute, but they're all inspecting the situation and they find this tongue, like you said, that has these specific slash marks that the other native woman had done to her when they found her tongue when it was cut out and she was ultimately murdered. So first thoughts on Jodie Foster as a character in this. What did you think of her performance through the first episode?
I thought it was very strong. I thought they did a great job of not forcing too much, and it wasn't stereotypical either. I think going back to what I was saying, I feel like she is the tent pole of this community because she's very intelligent. She's very meticulous with how she looks at things. I mean, she's correcting her other police officers on like, okay, how do we like, are we all the cars accounted for? Like, did you get all the evidence from this room? And then she is trying to drive home and they almost get in a drunk driving accident. And she's very like familiar with this one woman who's been in for DUIs all the time. And she's like, you gotta stop doing this. So she's been involved and integrated into this community pretty thoroughly. And she knows how to handle a lot of things, but she's not used to anything like this. So I really liked how strong and commanding she was on screen. And I like that, also with True Detective, they put the partners almost at opposition against each other for most part. Like Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson could not be more opposite characters in that series, but yet they are forced to work together and they find their strengths in each other to figure out the case, but then they all go on their side tangents. So I also think Jodie Foster complements Kali Reis, who is her partner, and well, they're not partners yet technically. They're just kind of
two different organizations, right? Is she so Jodie Liz Danvers is her character name, Jodie Foster.
Okay,
she works for it's like the Alaskan.
It's like just force, the town,
right? Yes.
Yeah.
So is it the town or is it the state?
So I
'Cause
think
I thought it was I thought Kali Reis was more of someone for the town.
she got assigned to state police because they said you can't work on this case anymore. You got to get reassigned.
Got it.
So they
Okay.
pushed her out of the town police department.
Got it.
Yeah.
And Jodie Foster she's like the chief of the town.
Yeah.
Correct? Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, so they are definitely on opposing sides. Again, I like we both sort of alluded to in the beginning, she's just in the mold of actor for this series, which 100%. I love that they brought her in for this. She plays like that, like really bothered like all the time sort of person where she, like her whole entire life is her job, it seems like. But then you still get those moments where she seems more human, where she talks about her fantasy football team, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
But she's intelligent, which I love. Like there's such a Jodie Foster plays intelligence well. Like I believe everything that she's saying as a cop, and sort of being the matriarch of this town. And like you said, the scene in particular where she almost gets in the car accident with the drunk driver who has a suspended license, shouldn't even be driving. She knows exactly how to handle the situation while she's still having that major middle ground of like, at the same time, I need to, like, my daughter is in crisis right now. Like, she's doing things she shouldn't be doing. So I thought she was great. Kali Reis is someone that I was aware of her because at one of the major film festivals a couple of years ago, she was in a film called Catch the Fair One, where she played a boxer. And I think that Barry Jenkins might have executive produced that. But this is like her first big thing. What were your thoughts on her performance in the first episode?
I thought she was really good. So far, she just seems like, somebody you don't want to mess with at all. Like, she just has a very physical force to her. Like, I can definitely see it when you were talking about her in a boxing movie. She has like a very MMA build to her. And then she's just, like, she would mess anybody up. I think she's going to mess somebody up at some point. And, I really like what she was doing as this like gritty, like, get out of my face. Like, she's very standoffish and rugged. And she definitely has a presence of her own that is individual and rebellious against Jodie Foster specifically so far. So I really like what she's doing, and kind of what you were saying about her ambiguous relationship. Like, I can't figure her out, like what she's into, like what is she like trying to do this for herself or for, like, she is trying to help the native people. Yeah. But it almost feels like from a selfish place, and Jodie Foster can see that she's like a bit of a loose cannon, and she's not very disciplined because these are pretty dangerous things, and she's very impulsive compared to Jodie Foster, who's like, no, we have to go about this the right way if we're going to get things done. And yeah, her ambiguous relationship was definitely like, there's a lot of deeper stuff behind that, I think, too, because like while they were having sex, the guy was in pain and she was almost into that. And I was like, whoa, like that's something happened traumatically, like with, I don't know, like there's a lot of like deeper clues that they gave us in the first episode. Yeah. And then another crazy thing that got like glazed over in the scheme of the episode was the thing with Jodie Foster's daughter. She got like kicked out of school temporarily because she was like videotaping someone having sex with a minor.
The way I interpret, I actually didn't hear, or I don't remember the part where she said she got suspended from school because of that. So she got a call while she's in the office, the police headquarters. Yeah. From the mother of who I think her daughter was having sex with. And they're basically videotaping, they're recording themselves having sex, and they were distributing it, I think, to classmates. Yeah, I think what was happening. Yeah. And she has the one comment where she's like, what do you mean you don't know what you did wrong? You're literally like on camera having sex with a 15-year-old or whatever. Like someone's having sex with 15, and she's like, I was the 16-year-old, she was the 15-year-old.
Which is crazy.
To like that, but that's the mentality of where her character comes from. The other interesting thing to me that I'm not upset that we haven't explored it yet, I do hope we get some answers. Isabella LeBlanc plays Leah Danvers, who is Jodie Foster's daughter in the series. Very obviously is not of the same skin tone as Jodie
and
Foster.
I couldn't figure that out yet either.
That I think is an interesting foil to what we're also going to find out, because these murders that the main murder that they refer to so much in the series that hadn't been solved is based on an indigenous woman that it happens to. And it seems to me that there's very obvious that she had a relationship with an indigenous man based on the way her
Right.
daughter looks. Like you would, I don't mean to assume, but you would have to assume.
Or she's adopted, which is another thing I was
theory
curious
you could go
about.
with. Yeah.
Because I don't know. That's what I was trying to figure out. And I mean, it's fine. It doesn't have to be explained in the first episode. But her being a single mom too in this situation, like I can't tell if it's going to add to her character if a man walked out on her or if she just did adopt somebody, or maybe she saved her from something and then she just took her under her wing. So because she's a very like rebellious teen herself too. She feels like zero connection to Jodie Foster.
Yeah.
It seems like. So whether that's from an absent father or a traumatic past, like I don't know yet, but I also did notice that Jodie Foster has like what we think of as like, oh, masculine traits, or like she has like fantasy football, like she's dressed in like the sweatshirt and stuff. Like she's not like like what other people and other shows would define as like just like straight up feminine like cop traits and stuff, which is very cool, and I like what they're doing with that. So I'm interested to see how that plays out in the arc of the show too, and if that contributes more to her character. And I think it does, because so like in old movies and stuff like that, they would always make the chief the man, at the like classic man with a tie, like old seasoned guy. But I mean, she resembles that in a lot of ways, just visually so far, and even in her personality. So I like what they twisted a little bit.
Yeah, and again, like she plays the cop role differently in Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah,
but she's still imposing as a figure, like on screen, playing a detective or a cop.
Right.
Going back to the daughter for a second, I do think, and I wonder if there is such a disconnect because, again, relating back to what this murder might be, if she is someone of indigenous descent, or being like an indigenous native, her daughter, like how could that be affecting their relationship as well? Like this murder wasn't solved. Jodie Foster, I think, was also originally on the case, right? Or she's like researching into it as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's also a connection where you start to see maybe that dissolve that's happening between the two of them. So I am interested to see if we find out more about that. But again, too, the thing I do like is that even though we are focusing on the two main detectives, there are some side characters that we're already sort of having interesting visual things with as well. Fiona Shaw is also in this show, which I didn't know, and she's great in Andor. But she plays the older woman that's cutting up the caribou, and she sees this figure that's like you were talking about, like horror. Like I mean, that is the epitome of like something that's like kind of horrific in terms of the visual style. What did you think about that, and where do you think that might lead us into as we go on into the season?
I really like when True Detective does those mind-bending things where it just, you step back from it. And I was actually just watching an interview recently. It's about The Shining and just some of horror films of that era too. But they were saying how sometimes the best horror is when the audience has no idea what's going on. And at that point, that brief moment, you're like, whoa, what's going on? Like, I have no, like, that is horrific in itself. So when True Detective does these things, like they've done like hallucinations in the past, they've done like very detailed paperwork or something, like they get something from a killer and it's like layered and text and stuff that we can't understand. When someone is thinking out something that sinister and methodical visually, your mind is running to different areas of what else are they capable of. And this wasn't directly connected as the murder situation yet. They were pointing out where the spot was, but for a ghostly figure to be appearing, it is just more of like, that's the tone that they go for in True Detective. This is not the classic FBI guy walks up to the scene with a coffee cup and then they go back with paperwork and they got their man. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
This is an exploration of like a dark place and sinister place in people's minds. Because I was thinking about that too, of the choices that you would make as a director. Like, what are the ways that we can introduce a crime scene? For some reason, they pick a phantom to do this ghostly dance in the ice and to point out in this like crazy fashion, like almost extraterrestrial fashion. It was like,
Yes.
so you're thinking to yourself, you're like, why would they choose to do a tone like that? And that's just to, I think, emphasize like how dark and like undefined answers are in some points, and just like, you know, or a reach out from like the underworld, like I don't know, just
Yeah, yeah.
something like that is deeper and darker beneath the surface,
It's
I
like the most
guess.
fucked up type of murderer or serial killer you can
Yeah.
find that and they add that with this season in particular too, and they've done it like you said in past seasons as well, but it has like a weird supernatural effect and
Yes, that's the word. Yeah.
very very
Mhm.
mysterious. And I know you had made a note too because they put a direct Easter egg in front of it, but so much of this reminds me of the vibe that I got when I watched The Thing,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
which I love because I'm a huge fan of The Thing. So the setting just plays such an important role in what they're going to do with the season, which I feel like had to have been a big part of their pitch, where they like just picture this with like the how terrifying it is that it's dark 24/7 and that it's
Right.
taking place in a place where literally you can't get warmth because this is where we fucking live. That was it was a really interesting scene to me. I didn't really know what was happening, but I, like you said, I like how they're able to mess with the mind and, like you said, mind bending of the viewer, because you're constantly thinking, and it's a really great device to set up as a showrunner to get your audience invested, like
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
It actually makes me think, and I love how you were talking about some of the scenes where they're doing the paperwork and they have these visual cues in True Detective, which sets it apart. Like a show that I am in love with that I think probably could have benefited from something similar to that is something like Mindhunter.
I was just thinking that. Yeah.
Mindhunter, because I think the two best modern cop shows ever are probably Mindhunter and True Detective.
Yeah.
Now, True Detective's hard because, again, it's like pick and choose your season, how you want to approach it. I think both seasons of Mindhunter are absolutely incredible, but they have like these shock me moments in terms of like visual grotesque murders, but a lot of it is you're not seeing on screen, which is obvious. Like you don't see a lot of that besides like the opening scene of Mindhunter, which is insane. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so insane. But if Mindhunter did a little bit more of that, I feel like they probably could continue on with their series because a lot of people love that show. True Detective is able to encapsulate this so many different genres all in one, and this season in particular, which is why I'm a fan of the premiere, because it's putting us on a ride where they're just basically like, all right, strap in, because you're not going to have any fucking idea what's happening. There's so many different things that are being approached. It has like a noir feeling too. It gives you a little bit of that film noir side, which I also appreciated. But yeah, like I don't know, the one more human, I guess, part of it that we haven't touched on, I talked a little bit about it before we talked spoilers, was the whole interaction and scene between John Hawkes' character named Hank and his son, who's played by Finn Bennett. He plays Peter, his son. Jodie Foster calls Peter and is like, hey, I need you to get these files because I've been asking your father for them for months and he's not delivering them and I need them. And it's very interesting to see the dynamic of father-son, because this is not a situation where he goes, hey, dad, like, I need these files. Like, Chief is asking for them. He has to lie about the fact that he is trying to go to his father's house to get an old photo of himself when he was a kid to show his friend. And so he's basically throwing his dad off the case every single time. He's like, goes in and he's like, yeah, I painted this room for my new bride that he's basically bought. And then he goes, yeah, I'm a little hungry. Can you make me some food, to distract him so that he can go in the room with all the files, and smartly finds the box that he needs, open up the window, throws it out the window, which I loved. Because
that was good. He couldn't just carry it out.
Yeah, and you don't see, but I agree with you. It's good. I love that that's such a small detail, but they don't do shit like that in shows, when like that's legitimately what would happen. If you're talking about somebody that is so afraid of whatever is going to come, if their father just finds out that they're going through something without them knowing, like, you're going to do anything in your power to like quickly just get that shit out so that like they don't think anything of it. So what did you think about the relationship between those two and what maybe potentially will be coming? Because I'm intrigued by that relationship as well, and also the relationship between John Hawkes' character and Jodie Foster's, because it seems to have a very interesting history there.
There's a little bit of tension there. Yeah. So I think that's going to be, I think that might play into the payoff of what is tied into this, because I think every time that he's been asked something of like by Jodie Foster to, you know, go gather evidence or to check on this. He's always questioned her motives and always challenged her. So I don't think that he's a perpetrator, but I think he might be complicit and knows something about the murders. I think because he's also withholding evidence files and he's like, "Oh, I just brought him back to my house because I had to change him in the flood." Like, I don't know if he actually killed this woman, but I think he might have had a hand in knowing who did it. So, and also when they give you this small town vibe, a lot of crime dramas that give you that backdrop of a small town thing, a lot of people are just connected everywhere, so like they have motive behind being protective of their community and stuff. So I think that he might be involved in that first woman's murder, and maybe he knows who did the older man.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
there's definitely a racial divide, or maybe I'm just getting that vibe
Oh,
from
that
his
too.
character.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that it's obvious that John Hawkes' character has a dislike or a distaste for the indigenous, which is another reason why I'm very curious. Like, his son is dating an indigenous woman.
Yeah,
So that's
that
another
probably doesn't know.
that's
Yeah.
another foil that can be. And I do like that. The only thing that worries me is like they're setting up so much for us to wonder about as a viewer. It's like you only have 6 episodes to get through all of this, so use your time wisely, which they usually do. The writing is usually so good. I think it's a good opportunity though to talk about, like, so the original people are not involved really in terms of the direct affecting of what is happening with season 4 of this. Cary Fukunaga is obviously not involved. Nick Pizzolatto, I believe, again, is the creator of the series, but I don't think he wrote any of the episodes. Like, I think he's credited as creator, so he's still on as a writer on IMDb. But Issa Lopez is the writing and does the writing and the directing on this. I am curious on your thoughts in terms of the writing and the direction. What are your thoughts so far? And do you think this is going to be a story that we can sustain over 6 episodes and keep you intrigued week to week?
I think so. I think it'll have a pretty easy time doing that in 6 episodes because I think they did a nice shift. They set up the town environment. They set up multiple storylines. They set up, like you were saying, you know, the son and the the couple, like his son and his relationship. You got the other cops and their tension between each other. The lab thing, I'm really interested to hear about and what they're studying. Then you have several clues all over the lab that they'll be exploring over the next couple weeks. The relationships between both of the partner, Jodie Foster and Kali Reis, and what the heck is going on with her boyfriend, ambiguous partner, and yeah, there's just a lot of room for growth and for them to discover things along the way, and they've been presenting it in a very creative way where it's super dark and it's super immersive, where you feel like you're trapped in there with them in the middle of this chaos.
Yeah,
So I like it.
One thing I forgot to mention, I can't believe we didn't actually say it yet. In that first scene after the caribou jump, when the delivery man is delivering something, you get a quick shot down the hallway of someone running past, like a silhouette.
Yeah,
And it's very, like you said, extraterrestrial. Like,
it's supernatural, like you were saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on that? Because to me, it's like, I don't know what the hell that was. It's probably a person, right? It's probably a human. But the way that they do it visually, they set it up as if it's a monster. Do you think they go that direction? I mean, I would have to assume not, but
If they went with a monster, I'd be a little upset.
I feel similar.
I feel like it's the you know, I a lot of what I loved about the first season was the back and forth of dark and light. Like you actually hear at the end of season 1, McConaughey was like the constant battle between the dark and the light, and his character is like a major atheist in that show too. Like he completely, because of what he's seen on the crime scenes, he's like, I don't believe that God would let this stuff happen, in so many words and in his own words, because he's so out there and philosophical. But I feel like with this show, like this is just kind of always putting in perspective, like, how do these evil people exist in the world? How are darker people allowed to do these things in the eyes of the higher power and that kind of thing? So I think if they threw in literally like an alien into this situation, it would be like, okay, the gloves are off. Anything can happen.
Yeah,
You know?
I agree. And
So-
I agree with you. I think it becomes too much of a crapshoot if you start sort
Yeah.
of wiggling that type of stuff in there. We start to see things play out. A lot of really haunting sort of imagery and significance, which I know you made a lot of notes on, which I appreciate. Thank you.
Yeah.
We see a lot of this, the spirals on a lot of. It's in some of the files, right? It's on some of the murder scenes. I didn't catch the "We Are All Dead" on the whiteboard. Where did you see that?
That was crazy. That was a part that kind of gave me chills because I was imagining like the steps that it would take for them to write that and then whatever else to happen to them. And I was like, oh my gosh.
So
something
where was
really
that? Where?
bad.
Because I don't even remember that. Maybe I'm just like blanking.
So while they were canvassing the lab and they were searching for more evidence, there was one of their bioengineering rooms where it was on a whiteboard and Jodie Foster noticed it and it says like "We are all dead." Like them writing that in their own words. Like what that's what they were saying too at the end of the episode. Like what drove them out here? And it's kind of symbolic to the thing too. It's like what would drive them to do this craziness? That's like the spaceship in the beginning of the thing.
Yes.
They're like, why would they torch their own lab? And then you're like paranoid. Like that movie is based on paranoia.
Yes.
And that's how good. Like it's not just a monster movie, the thing. It's solely crafted around paranoia, who is taken, like who's just been shifted into the thing, who got captured, and then can we trust this person? Are they gonna turn against me even if they're human? Like that kind of thing. So those are elements they're incorporating into this too, but like not in that situation, but like at least with them and going back and forth and the tension. But when you're thinking about what happened to them, like we are all dead. Like, whoa, what got
what
in the
drove
way?
them to that much of a mindset where they're really writing that on a whiteboard for everyone to see and to make a note and sort of warn exactly whoever was going to be there next and discover what was happening.
Right.
It's a very interesting dynamic. Again, like that supernatural vibe I do like for this because, but again, I'm curious and I'm worried about the fact that like it might take too much of a supernatural turn. So I don't know. I think we're gonna have to wait and see. I don't know.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about certain character beats and things like that. I know you had made a note. The spirals are significant in the first season as well. With the murders. So do you think that they're going to have a legitimate connection? You think that might be how they do a tie-in, or do you think it's just this worked once, let's go again?
I can't tell if it's going to be a direct connection as if it was like a copycat killer, like trying to recreate something that they did with McConaughey's season. Or if it's, another killer that escaped in the first season and now he's doing it up here. I kind of feel like that would be a cop out a little bit if they just take from that, because at this point in this first episode, it doesn't feel like they need to bring anything from the first season. It feels so unique.
Yes, I agree. Do you think do we get a time period for this show?
It's modern day,
but it doesn't tell you, right? It gives you like a date, but I don't think it gives you a year.
I think even. Oh yeah, that's true. So
she also says fantasy football. So it's that has to be present.
It's got to be present day. But I know, I like McConaughey's season. It's over several decades.
Yes,
and
Mahershala's
season 3. Yeah.
Yes.
So
interesting. Do you have any negatives with the first episode? I have two small ones, but it's nothing major.
I might watch it again. There might be something, but so far I can't really like. I don't want to get too critical of a first episode.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. The one thing, very little, though it is haunting the opening scene, and I get that you need to do it this way, but the CGI is very noticeable on the caribou.
That's a good point. Yeah, no, the CGI was.
That's something I think you can just be like, yeah, guys, just shitty. Maybe do something. Do something a little different. For me, the thing I worry about with the dynamic of Kali Reis and Jodie Foster is I agree with what you were saying in the first season. McConaughey and Woody are so entirely different human beings, and it's so obvious to the viewer and the way that the characters are written. And I don't think this is anyone's fault. I think that it's just a direction they decided to go in, and I'm not majorly worried about it, but it's something that I can see other viewers not particularly liking. both Callie and Jodie Foster's characters, in terms of the types of women that they are very similar. They're very cold. They're very, again, imposing figures. Now, again, the one thing that does separate them, which I appreciated that you brought up, was the fact that Jodie Foster's character is very calculated. She's someone that's seasoned, and that's the difference. Where Callie Reis's character, it's very obvious that she has these loose cannon traits where she can kind of just flip on a whim. And it's obvious that's why she got relegated to a different sort of police force and got taken off the original case.
Yeah.
I worry that you have a little bit too much of similarities in the characters going forward that, and the thing, like, Callie Reis is a new actress, and I think she's good in the first episode. But Jodie is such a presence on screen that it's like she might just be doing it better. You know, that's what worries me. Yeah. So again, not a major criticism. I don't think the performance is bad. I think that in terms of character work, you may start to see some people being like, well, these kind of just seem like the same two characters that are going to battle against one another. I don't know if you feel, if you could see that.
I think that will come in time. I hope that it comes in time. I hope that they become a little bit more solidified as different from each other. I think if you did a little too much of that in the first episode, it would take up a little too much screen time. Yeah, if you were trying to say like they're very different. I mean, she is kind of different in a few ways where she's going off and she's just with a partner like that she doesn't seem affectionate with. She just seems like she's in a physical relationship with him. Jodie Foster doesn't seem like she would necessarily do that unless something happened to her, you know, to get her to that point. So I think they have very different backgrounds in that way. And then I think they're also bringing up this idea of like the division in race of this area too. And I think there were several comments by someone else made against Callie Reis and like towards the character, you know, like I think they were
online you're saying?
Oh no, not online. No, I mean like in the show. Yeah, I think in the show they were kind of like demeaning her or not treating her as serious, you know. Yeah. And then, she was reassigned, you know, like forget about her. Like she's not a serious detective. Like that's the impression I'm getting. I don't even know how much was in it. I'd have to go back, but I think that will play out more in time. I think they'll start to like split off once it unravels. But yeah.
I kind of want to rewatch it too. I feel like there's some things that I missed. I mean, do you want to give scores?
Ooh, first episode.
First episode. You want to give a first episode score, or should we wait?
Yeah, I'll give it a score. Like I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10 so far. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go 8.5. Okay, so I'm a little lower than you. I think that again, it's hard. It's really hard to rate a pilot unless it's like the greatest thing ever or a first episode, because there's still so much that we need to see unfold. But for the most part, this is a good reintroduction into True Detective, and I'm really happy to see Jodie Foster get a role like this. And I'm excited to see how this unfolds over the next 6 weeks. We're gonna have a lot more to talk about as the weeks go on, I think.
Oh yeah, I think so.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys. Well, that was our review and analysis for the first episode, the premiere episode of season 4 of True Detective, subtitled The Night Country. You guys can check it out. It's on HBO on Sundays. It's at 9 p.m., right?
Yeah,
9 p.m. Eastern Standard on HBO. You guys can also watch it right after that on HBO Max. Now, I guess just Max. But let us know in the comments what you guys thought about the premiere. Are you guys fans of True Detective? Is this the first time you ever tuned into True Detective? I think that would be very interesting if that was the case. But
be cool.
Maybe you just tuned in because of Jodie Foster. Let us know what you guys thought of the premiere in the comments. Be sure to give this video a like and let us know if you guys want to see more of these. We're planning on doing the whole season. If you guys can subscribe, we are the Culture Wave Media Network. Just hit that bell for alerts. We have new content coming for you guys all the time. We are at Cinema Wave Media on Instagram, TikTok, as well as on Threads and on Facebook. We're also at _Culture Wave Media and at Jersey's Finest Pod on Instagram as well for our other podcast content. Just signing off, I am Darian Scalamoni.
I'm Zach Miller.
And we'll see you guys next time.